Thank you. I'm Kevin Hodgson, and I teach 6th grade out in Southampton. I'm also a technology liaison with the Western Massachusetts Writing Project, and I'm interested in the idea of gaming, and I brought along a little prop today, my Angry Birds here, to talk about what it means to have video games as part of our culture, particularly with our children, but also with us as adults, and kind of what it means. And for the most part, what it means is that students are really engaged outside the classroom in a lot of different ways. And but we have to remember too that, particularly with the Angry Birds and other apps, that it's more than just a game that they're putting out. They're also putting out a whole marketing effort. And so part of our role as teachers is to teach our students to be really critical of the media that they're doing, the technology that they're engaged in, and to try to make shifts in how they see themselves and the agency that they have in these kind of realms. So I started thinking about games, not because I was a gamer, but because I was listening to what my students were talking about. And part of what I noticed is during some unstructured time is that there were words, vocabulary kind of filtered into my ears that I was not really understanding. And a lot of this got me interested in the kind of literacies that my students are doing outside the school around reading and writing, creating media, publishing to YouTube, all the kinds of things that sometimes we don't value inside our classroom. So I started asking them questions about what it is that they were talking about, and they were talking about the video games they were playing, either online or with their Xbox or on their devices, whatever happens to be. And they were sure to use another word too to describe me, which is the noob. And I was, in a way, but I also played it up so that I could ask those questions of them in their role as gamers as well. So one of the things that I noticed as I was doing research and talking to my students, but also doing my own kind of research, is just the amount of time they're spending with their devices and with the gaming that they're doing. So here in Jane McGonigal's book, she talks a lot about different studies that she looked at around gaming, and noticed that that a lot of the studies point to by the time kids are about 21, they've played about 10,000 hours of video gaming, which seems a lot to me, particularly if you put it next to the kind of reading that they're doing and writing as well. But that 10,000 hours also ties into some work that Malcolm Gladwell has done, particularly around outliers, thinking of what makes an expert or an elite person in a field. And again, that kind of 10,000 hours is what he used. And thinking of these generations of students playing all these games and kind of what it means for them as they kind of move into adulthood. And what it means for us as teachers having them in our classrooms right now as well. And in particular, what I've been wondering about is, are they the players of other people's games, or are they the creators of other people's games? And for the most part, they're just players. They are interacting with media and technology that have been built by other people. And even though we have this illusion of us as the kind of in the driver's seat when we sit at our computer or play on our device or use our phone, for the most part, it's the programmers who have programmed it underneath the code that's really kind of driving our interaction. We have this illusion that we're in the driver's seat, but for the most part, we're not. We're passive kind of recipients of what other people have kind of planned out for us. So as teachers, I think our challenge here is to flip that and allow our students to become the creators of content. And for me, I started thinking about how I might bring video game design into the classroom, my 6th grade classroom, in a meaningful way where my students were creating games, not just playing them, but designing them and publishing them. So as we were doing this, my teachers, my co-teacher and our science teacher, and we started kind of thinking about video game design, what it means, and you can see that these are some of the skills that video game designers go through around critical thinking and inquiry, and the way that you have to really do a lot of planning and collaboration, kind of all these kind of higher level skills that you would see on the top or near the top of the Bloom's taxonomy that come to play in video game design. And as a writing teacher, I was really curious about the ways that there are parallels between how we write and how we design games. Recognizing, of course, that none of these are linear, that they do circle back on each other. Particularly, game design has what's called the iterative design process, where things are always in flux and always in the midst of being revised. And one thing I'll point out on this particular chart is that for the most part, when we're writing, when we're done writing, the writing is done. But not with game design. With game design, things are always being updated and revised as needed. And if you have an iPhone or an iTouch or whatever it is, and you go on to an app store, most likely you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, or more apps ready to be updated, because programmers and designers are continuing to look at the data underneath as people are using the games and creating newer and newer versions to fix things that are wrong and make sure that they're improving the experience for the gamer. So in our classroom, we decided that we would get our students designing games. And the way we did it is we used a site called GameStar Mechanic that allows students to walk through the process of learning about game design and build their own games, and then publish them to an authentic gaming community of other students. And through this kind of process that we did, which is a collaboration across science class and ELA class, is students worked some together, some by themselves, to brainstorm, design, build, publish, and revise their games in a really kind of authentic way. And it was a very engaging project for the students where they had to use vocabulary and concepts they had learned in science class into their games, build them in, but also create a narrative storyline for the player to be going through. So that you have these different levels of the writing components brought in, content area literacy as well. There were a lot of curricular connections when you think of it in this kind of terms of the kind of bigger umbrella idea. Certainly math plays a role into it, looking at the data of who's played your game and what they've done when they've been in there. Thinking about information literacy, collaboration, revision, writing, and science, and publishing, and more, that are really part of our shift into the Common Core curriculum that really calls for this kind of thinking. That moving away from literacy is some isolated experience. Instead, it should be across various content levels, and you should be moving into more media and technology, part of that, but again, not kids as the passive users of it, but active creators with it. So, you know, thinking in terms of the students' experience, they certainly did enjoy the idea of making and publishing their own video games, and a lot of them couldn't believe that we were actually doing it. We did document a lot of what we were doing at a website, gamingforschools.ulosat.com. And here, teachers and students both did video reflections about our experience, and there's tons of resources on here that you can use to bring gaming into your classroom as well. Thank you.